Hi, everybody. We are here for our visual wilderness episode for the night. And tonight we're going to talk about the importance of critique, how incredibly important it is to photography, how incredibly important it has been in our own photographic careers, and how much it meant to us along the path of learning. We have a couple of slides we're going to share with you. We want to talk about some of the critiques that have been going on in our visual wilderness community. And yeah, we're going to go from there. So I am Verena Patel. I am a professional wilderness and landscape photographer, and we are here tonight to do our thing. Okay, go ahead.
And I'm Jay Patel. I am Verena's better half or worse half, depending on how you look at it. And we're going to talk about how to critique your photos and also how we go about critiquing the photos. What might appear as obvious critique is sometimes not quite as obvious as we would like. So I will start by sharing a slide and our thoughts on how we look at a photo and what makes a winning photo. And then we'll jump into the discussion. So give me a second and I will share my screen and a slide and see if we can see this.
All right, we've got it.
All right, so here's what we think, and let me go into a full PowerPoint presentation mode so you guys can see this. Can everybody see this?
Yeah, go ahead and fill the screen there, Jay.
I filled it in. Can you guys see this?
Not yet. It might take a second, but let's just go ahead and go from here. It doesn't matter.
All right, so I think I may not be able to fill the screen, but if it isn't, then I will try to see if I can actually go ahead and try to make this, minimize this, and see if.
Yep, good idea.
All right, so here we go. So the way we look at what makes a winning photo has three characteristics. There's a technical side to the winning photo. There's a creative side to the winning photo, which is shown up here, and then there is an emotional appeal for the winning photo. Now, when we talk about technical side, we are talking about various technical aspects of taking a photograph. For example, we're talking about field work. Does a photo have good field work? Is it exposed properly? Is the focus where it needs to be? Or are we distracting the viewers? What is the composition like? Did we use the right light, the right weather? And then finally, we come to a post-processing. Now, in today's world, the post-processing is a wide open area. And you can have any kind of post-processing tools or sort of style of post-processing. So what we look at is ultimately the technical side has to near perfection. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't get away with an imperfect technical photo. You can. So ultimately, the goal of the technical side is to be able to create emotional appeal in terms of the viewer. Anything you want to add, Verena?
Well, I do want to point out that you'll notice as you look at this slide that some elements that we're looking at when we look for a really great photo actually appear in more than one category. You know, there are technical aspects to composition, for example. There are also creative aspects, obviously, to composition, and same goes for post-processing. Same goes for a lot of this, how you deal with light, how you deal with perspective. So the technical side and the creative side, the emotional side, they do blend together in a pretty big way. But when you're judging a photo, or when you're critiquing somebody's photo, when you're critiquing your own photo, which is incredibly important, all those things sort of, they blend together. But if you can start to separate them out a little bit, if you can start to look at your image, take it apart a little bit at a time, it really makes a huge difference to your finished work.
Yeah, so when we look at a photo, first thing that I always look for is how good is the technical side? Is the technical side of the photograph done right? But that's not the only side we look at, right? Then we have to look at what we call the creative side. And the creative side of the photo sometimes can be so overwhelming that imperfect technical side doesn't really matter that much. And the creative side, again, like Marina said, sort of blends between technical side and emotional appeal. There is a unique composition, but the composition also appears on a technical side. So there are some guidelines of composition that people follow or use some suggested rules of composition. But then they can go beyond that rules and come away with something very unique. The same thing with perspective. You can have a completely different perspective on a photo. You can have a blurry photo instead of a sharp photo, and that could be because of some sort of perspective you're trying to convey to your viewers. Similarly with out-of-box thinking, a lot of times you'll see our photographs that look technically perfect, but they are created by some generic out-of-box technique that you will probably never read about it in a textbook. And then there's a creative processing. Sure, you can always look at your histogram and process the images and make sure that everything is exposed properly. But sometimes you may not really want to expose everything properly. If you're trying to convey a mood or a feeling or colors or an artistic image, then that processing has to go above and beyond a perfect technical processing. So there is a creative processing. So as Verena pointed out, technical and creative side sort of merge together. Did I say it correctly, sweetheart?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that comes to mind for me is that you may have a photo where the technical side is questionable. You may have a photo where the creative side isn't really that amazing, but it has an incredible emotional appeal, and that could be enough. In some cases, the emotional appeal is so amazing that that's enough. Or maybe it's the creative side. It's not that it has to have all of these things, but all of these things help. They all contribute to how well that image works. If you have all three, you have a solid image. If you have just one, whatever it is, whatever that one thing is, has to be incredible before the photo really has that strong impact.
So when we look at a photo, we are always looking at technical side and creative side. And the way I look at the photo, and it could be different the way Verena looks at it, but the technical side and creative side, the goal of both of those roles is to be able to create emotional appeal. Now, that doesn't mean that emotional appeal cannot be created with a photo on its own. Sure, it can. But majority of the photographs that you will take or that I have taken, we try to do the technical side and make sure that the technical side and creative side work together to create an emotional appeal. Now, emotional appeal is psychological, and it is something in terms of science, something called ether in space, where you really, or dark matter, you really don't know what it is, but you know it exists because it can be best described in terms of a feeling. So when we talk about emotional appeal, people always ask, what the heck is emotional appeal? What the heck is dark matter? And if you're a geek like me. But let me see if I can actually put my finger on emotional appeal. Emotional appeal is something that will make you look at a photograph and say, wow, I wish I had taken that photograph. Or I wish I was at that location. Or, oh, wow, that is on my bucket list. I want to go there.
It
That
can be something much more simple, more sort of primal. This image makes me remember my childhood, or this image makes me want so badly to be in that photo, you know?
or something like, I don't like spiders.
Yeah. Oh,
But they make fantastic macros, though, you have to admit.
they do. Gorgeous macros. Yep. Yep. They are
But
beautiful creatures.
yeah.
As long as they're not in my bed.
So when you look at, I hope not. I better check the bed tonight.
Yeah, you're gonna have to.
So when you look at emotional appeal, the way we look at emotional appeal is emotional appeal is elusive. It also depends upon your viewer, as well as it depends upon subject, familiarity, location, mood, presentation. So you can take a really great photo and kill emotional appeal by changing just the presentation. Or you can take a really bad, technically imperfect photo, or a really bad photo with really bad technical side and really bad creative side, but the emotional appeal is so great of the photo because it appeals to our primal instinct like fear or love,
Mhm, mhm.
that you'll say, wow, that is a great photo, even though it may be blurry, it could have
A lot of times, photos like that are ones maybe we see in the news. I mean, think about the Boston Marathon bombings, right? The anniversary is just now happening, and it's in the news again. And here are all these images. And when you see a photo, one of those iconic photos from the Boston Marathon bombing, you know what? It doesn't matter the quality of the photo. Seeing that photo is a kick in the gut. It has that emotional impact. It's not appeal. We don't love it, but it is such a strong instinct in us that it's a kick in the gut. It's a feeling. It's an emotion.
and that another example of the emotionally impacting photo is a girl from Vietnam War who was burned and is running and crying.
Yeah, the
Um,
napalm. They call her the
yeah.
napalm girl. Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't have to be a tragedy to create emotional impact. Like, I'll give you an example: the Afghan girl photo that appeared on cover of National Geographic
Mhm.
created such a strong emotional impact
With
for
her
whoever
gorgeous
saw them.
eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So emotional impact, and it doesn't have to be journalistic photos. There are other photographs that have created emotional impact. Ansel Adams' print a lot of times create emotional impact for the in the viewers. So what we try to do when we're out in the field or we're processing a photo or we're looking to shoot a photo is use technical and creative side to create emotional appeal. And that is sort of our workflow to get a winning photo. Now, when we critique a photo, we will also look at the same criteria.
Mhm.
Does it have good technical side? Does it have good creative side? And if they don't have either one of those, does it have emotional appeal?
Mhm.
And we will judge the photo based on these three criterias.
Mhm. So
So go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we need to move on a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about how critique has helped us over time. If you were finished with that thought, let's move on to that.
All right. Do you want me to go to the next slide or do you want me to move somewhere
No,
else?
before we go on to the next slide, I want to say, when when Jay and I first started out in photography, when most people started out in photography, you have the opinions of family and friends. They say to you, "Oh, this is beautiful. You're so good at that. You should go pro. Wow." But the problem with your family and friends, as wonderful as they are, is that they love you and they care about you and they don't want to hurt your feelings. And uh, therefore, their critique, most of the time, probably isn't what you really need to improve your photography substantially. So Jay and I both started submitting our photos separately before we even knew each other. We were submitting our images to critique websites. There were several of them at the time. We were on a collection of these websites, and our photos were up there, and we were getting critiques. We were giving critiques. It was all this back and forth. When I first started, I was a little nervous about giving critiques. It wasn't something I was used to. I didn't know how to do it. So I would read what other people had written, and I would sort of try and find a similar response or rather a similar way to critique. I was looking for the ones that stood out to me as being particularly good critiques, and then I would try and say, okay, I see the format here, I see what they're doing, I'm going to try and do the same with another photo. And so not only was I getting this incredible feedback from people saying, consider making this change to your photo. Maybe the image will have more impact. Darken the corners. Maybe that'll help you bring your attention to the point of interest. All these different ideas, suggestions. Some were great. Some I didn't agree with. It didn't matter. I decided that I was going to really listen to every single critique that came my way, and it made me a completely different photographer. It took my work to a completely different level. I could feel myself getting better every day. Now, at the same time, as I said, I was giving critiques. And all of a sudden, I was breaking down people's photos, breaking them apart trying to figure out why I liked it or why I didn't like it, what it was about that image that was working or wasn't working. And instead of that first thought, which is, I don't like it, or, oh, I really like it, I was pushing past that and trying to understand the why behind it. And pretty
And
soon I was applying that to my own photography, very soon. I was applying it to my own photography, and I was able to begin to take apart my own photos. And before long, I was doing it before I took my camera out of the bag. So critique now, for me, starts in the field. It starts well before I take my camera out. I'm already refining the image that I'm creating in my head.
And we did this phenomenon that Raina talked about getting, oh, you're a great photographer, you should go pro. It also, you see it in social media as well, right? You
Yeah.
get a lot of pats on the back, a lot of likes, a lot of plus ones, and people do it for all kinds of reasons. Doesn't necessarily mean that your photo is great.
Hmm.
And when I started in photography, independently of Raina, before we each knew each other, I did the same thing. I would actually look at everybody's photo and break it down into three categories. Why does it appeal to me? And then I would find a reason why it appeals to me. And then I would look at the technical side, how the photo was created, the light, the exposure, the focus, and how creative was the photograph. And to be honest with you, it took me several years. It took me like 2 to 3 years before I could actually take a look at the photo and break it apart in these little pieces and say, this is a photo that appeals to me, and here's why. And this is the technical side that the photographer has followed, and then here's a creative side the photographer has followed. And now I can do this in the field. When I take a photograph, I will think about what I want to convey in my emotional appeal and how to use creative and technical side to go about doing it.
And you know what? The fact is that it's still critique is still enormously valuable to us. We don't mean to suggest that at some point critique is no longer useful and you can step back and say, okay, I have, reached the limit of critique being great. Now I'm a pro and I'm so amazing that I could never possibly need advice. That's just not the case. Jay and I sit side by side. His computer is not 3 feet from mine. And we critique each other's photos all the time. When we're in the field, we comment on what the other person is doing, and we sort of, I'm my own worst critic by far, but it's awfully nice to have Jay there to say every now and then, you know, your image is a little bit blue, or darken it a little bit, it's too bright, or how about a little more contrast, any of that. Or I'll say, hey, do you like this version or this version better? Which works better as I'm processing? I may decide to go completely against what he suggests. In fact, I often do. But having that input, hearing it, listening to it, and it becomes part of your workflow. It becomes part of how you think. It is invaluable.
And for me, it also is absolutely true. I'm my own worst critic. And for me, the critique starts in the field. When I take a photograph and I look at the back of the camera as I'm composing the photo and I see that there is a leaf or a distraction or a tree branch sticking out, I will not take a photo. A lot of times people say, hey, you must come away with thousands of photos. I said, no, I critique my photo right from the start when I start taking them. In a given day, if I come away with 100 photos, that is a great day for me. There
Yeah,
are
and you
days
know
when I
what?
come
A
away.
100 photos, you probably deleted 200 because I do. I delete all the time.
Yeah, and there are days when I come away with 10 photos in a whole day, and I was like, yeah, in those 10 photos, maybe deleted after I get home.
Yeah. Or
So,
two.
and the reason we do that is we start our critique in the field, our own critiques of our own work, and if things are not working out, and we cannot create a photo that creates emotional appeal, we will go look at something else. And oftentimes, like Marina suggested, we critique each other's work. Um, and you're right, Reina doesn't always take my advice, and I don't always take her advice.
Yeah. All right, so we have about maybe 10 minutes left. So let's go ahead. We want to show you a couple of images. We want to talk about them. And then we actually want to show you a couple of critiques that are happening, that are sort of in the process of happening even now on Visual Wilderness, and how incredible the results can be. We're just so amazed by how much these members are learning and how there's this all this back and forth and people are talking to each other and they're coming away with great photos. So, okay, so let's take a look at this photo that Jay has on his screen right now. This is a stork down in the Everglades. This is a shot that Jay took just for
Educational
teaching
purposes.
purposes. Yeah, because we wanted to show something. We wanted to point out what happens when you have a really distracting background, right? Take a look at this bird. I mean, his head is hard to pick out of the background. It's almost the same tone and temperature. It's really difficult to see the light on his wings, everything. I mean, it's just there's so much going on, light and shadow and crazy, right? It's not a particularly appealing image. A beautiful bird, but the image really doesn't work. So what do you do when you're in the field, right? We're talking about critique starting in the field. This is what we're talking about. We're standing there. This is what we're looking at. So what did I do with this image? So Jay, why don't you show the second image? I looked down and I realized there was this reflection of the bird in the water. And the reflection behind the bird, you could see the blue sky. And so it was a much more appealing background. And on top of that, the image was kind of unusual and interesting. It had a little bit more appeal emotionally to me because it was clearly a reflection. And then on top of that, look how nicely the bird's head stands out. I couldn't get that with the grass behind it. So as soon as I picked up my camera, as soon as I looked through that viewfinder, really, before I picked up my camera, as I was looking at the bird itself, I was saying to myself, this image doesn't work. But I still want to capture that bird. I think he's beautiful. I love the way he's sitting there. He looks like sort of a little old man with a big feather coat. How cool is that, right? If you can start thinking right there in the field with your camera, you can get a better photo almost every time. If I had come home with the photo on the top, there's nothing I could do in post-processing. It's too late. That's not to say that there isn't a lot you can do in post-processing to help a photo, but the fact is, if you can start your critique in the field, you're much more likely to come home with photos that are worth the post-processing time, that you're going to love and that you're going to want to add to your portfolio. So here's another shot. Jay, you're going to talk about this one, right?
Yeah, so I submitted this to a critique forum a while ago, and I got a lot of comments on this. One of the things that people said is, hey, your composition is too centered. The horizon is right in the center in the field. The rocks that stand out against the horizon are centered. Sure, the model is placed at the rule of the third, but then there is a wide angle distortion, all kinds of things about this photo. And every single one of these is a valid critique. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the critique. But when I took this photo, the feeling that I had brought my friend Anna from Italy to this beach in Oregon, and I was pushing her wheelchair, and I had one camera, one lens with me, and I looked up and I saw this beautiful sky, and she was smiling because after her surgery that put her in a wheelchair, she had this
After her
absolutely
accident,
after accident that put her in a wheelchair. She had this gorgeous smile, and she was enjoying the weather and the wind and the breeze. And all I said to her was, hey, I want to take a photo to capture that feeling. That's it. And I just pushed her chair away a couple of feet, stepped back, and took a single exposure with two things in mind. I wanted the sky and I wanted her smile, and put her as the object that I was going for. And sure, I got a lot of critique and I could improve the photo and do this, but at the time, I just wanted to capture the feeling. I wanted to capture the emotional appeal.
And in the end here, that was the key, right? The emotional appeal of this photo really hammers it home. It's enough.
And as much as the critiques I got, this image, by far, in both our portfolios, is the highest selling image that we own.
Hmm.
I mean, it is not the most popular on social media, nor is it most popular in the critique forum by saying it's a great image. It's harsh light and everything. There's a lot of things wrong with it. But from a stock photography perspective, it sells more than all other images that we have.
So, Jay, we have about 4 minutes
You want
left.
to jump to the visual
So,
wilderness?
yeah, let's go ahead and jump over to Visual Wilderness. Jay's going to screen share here, and I think we have time to talk through one of these critiques.
Yes.
Jay, which one do you want to do? You want to go with the flower detail?
Yeah, let's go with the flower detail. I will,
Okay.
give me a second and
So
I'll
I will
do it.
kind of give an intro while you bring that up.
Correct.
Okay. So one of the things that we do every month in Visual Wilderness is we have these assignments, and this month's assignment is details. So people are submitting their images of details, and in this forum, there's so much discussion. There's so much back and forth. People are jumping in, commenting on the images, and making suggestions for improvement. So we have this shot from Malcolm, and beautiful flower, such a pretty shot, and he posted it for the assignment, and people started to comment on it. And a little bit later, he decided to post a new image based upon the critiques and suggestions that he found in the forum. So he brought it in. He said, "This is my attempt at image simplification." People were suggesting that he simplify it a little bit, see what he could come up with. So now he has this gorgeous, gorgeous, simple image. But that's not the only thing he did. Look what else he did. Keep going, Jay. Scroll down. He started creating all these gorgeous studies, right? Hold it there and let it resolve a little bit. Look at these beautiful images of these petals. One single petal, this incredible simplified image, beautiful smooth background, these gorgeous details and curves. And it didn't stop there. He continued to post photos. I think there's at least one more in that little collection, right, Jay?
Yeah, but it is actually slightly different version of that.
Okay, yep. Oh, he cropped it in a little bit, I
Yes,
think,
he
right?
cropped it in and he
And
improved it
again, that
because
was
it's more there.
yeah, and again, that was based on critique and suggestion. And so this was his beautiful finished image. If you go again to that first image, look at the difference between this simple portrait of a flower petal and this image at the beginning here. It's a smaller image, of course, we can't see it at such large size, but that is what is happening in the forums. There's so much feedback. This is all kinds of suggestions and comments and ideas for improvement, and he came away with an image that I would be thrilled to have in my portfolio. I think it's gorgeous, and I love his other images as well. The other images of this petal. This is the value of critique. You go
And
from an image that's really nice to an image that is just breathtaking.
And this is exactly what a critique is supposed to do. It is supposed to lead you to improve the original photo, or if you can improve the original photo, give suggestions, just like much like Verena did critiquing herself as to how to isolate a subject. In this case, Malcolm did the same thing, is how do you isolate the subject? He went ahead and created a series of shots to be able to isolate the subject.
And you know what? When you hear advice like this, you can apply it next time you go out and shoot a completely different subject. It keeps coming back. It keeps coming into your head. You hear those little nuggets of advice bouncing around in your skull.
And so I just wanted to point out is that entire critique process for this particular image was very good. And we have several of these examples in the latest assignment, which is about details in visual wilderness.
So nice job, Malcolm. And you know what? Awesome job to all the people who jumped in and got involved in that critique. We're so impressed. We are so impressed by the quality of the critique. We're impressed by how active people have been, how much they're working together, helping people out. It's so awesome to watch what's going on. Really cool. So well done, everybody. All right, so I think it's time to wrap it up. Jay, did you have anything else you wanted to squeeze in?
No, I was just about to say that comes to the end of the time. If there's any Q&As, we can do a couple of minutes of Q&As. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
No, not tonight. No Q&A. We have a couple of comments, but no questions, so we're good.
All right. Thank you for joining us. We'll have this posted on Visual Wilderness for the members to access.
It'll be out in a couple of weeks probably. It takes us some time to get everything prepared and up on our blog. So you will see earlier episodes starting to come out, but it takes us a couple of weeks to get it out.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.